In 2004, a piece of metal the size of a deck of cards changed how the world saw a phone. This is the story of the Motorola RAZR V3. It was thinner than any phone before it, a blade of anodized aluminum that folded shut with a single, satisfying snap. Inside, a plastic, beige-colored industry. It looked like it came from the future. It would go on to sell more than 130 million units, becoming the best-selling clamshell phone in history. But nearly everyone inside Motorola thought this phone should never have been built at all. Motorola had once ruled mobile phones, inventing the first handheld cellular call in 1973 and popularizing them with the Star Trek-inspired StarTAC. By the early 2000s, that dominance had crumbled. Nokia and rising Korean brands were eating Motorola alive. Motorola's approval process had become notoriously slow and conservative, a company too afraid to bet on anything new. Somewhere inside this cautious giant, a small studio called Consumer Experience Design was quietly sketching a different future. Industrial designer Chris Arnholt was obsessed with one idea. What if a phone could be as thin as a blade? Engineer Roger Jellicoe, the man behind the MicroTAC and StarTAC, saw the concept model and realized it might actually be possible. But to protect from Motorola's own bureaucracy, the project had to be built almost entirely in secret. Development began in July 2003 under the codename RAZR, paired with a sister project code named Pebble. RAZR was aimed squarely at men, all sharp angles and chamfered edges, a blade disguised as a communication device. Marketing executive Jeffrey Frost believed in the project so fiercely he shielded it from corporate interference and gave it its name. When someone else claimed prior rights to RAZR, Motorola simply dropped the O. RAZR was born. Motorola's own product committee required a minimum of 3 million committed units before green-lighting any phone. RAZR was pitched at just 800,000 units. By every rule in the company, it should have been rejected outright. It survived anyway, kept alive by a handful of believers willing to stake their careers on a hunch. Now came the hard part, making something this thin actually work as a phone. The first problem: where do you put an antenna when the entire body is made of metal that blocks signal? The solution was radical. Hide the antenna inside the phone's non-folding chin, the one part of the body that never metal-on-metal contacts. Next, the keypad. Rather than plastic buttons, engineers etched an entire keypad from a single sheet of nickel-plated metal. Beneath the metal, a thin electroluminescent foil provided the glow, a technology more common in aircraft displays than cell phones. Only one supplier in the world could manufacture this etched metal keypad, and only in limited quantities. The external display faced its own crisis. Covered in plastic, it would scratch and bulge, so engineers used glass instead. That glass panel did double duty. Its rigidity became part of the phone's structural skeleton, keeping the thin chassis from flexing. Even the ports were reinvented. Motorola dropped the headphone jack and power connector, routing everything through one mini USB port. Every internal layer had to be re-engineered to fit inside 13.9 millimeters, thinner than most candy bar phones of the day. After a year of secret engineering, prototype after prototype finally closed with a satisfying precise snap. With the design locked, Motorola now faced an even bigger challenge: manufacturing hundreds of thousands of these precision devices. Raw aluminum stock arrived first, solid billets destined to become the phone's iconic chassis. CNC machines carved each chassis from these billets with tolerances measured in fractions of a millimeter. Next came anodizing, an electrochemical bath that hardened the aluminum surface and gave each RAZR its signature color. Reconstructed process. On another line, metal keypad sheets moved through the laser etching stage, each key outline burned with micron precision. In the clean room assembly bay, workers under magnification lamps hand-fit the circuit board, camera module, and hinge assembly. Each finished unit passed through drop tests, hinge cycle tests opening and closing tens of thousands of times, and signal calibration booths. By late 2004, factories were shipping finished RAZR V3 units by the truckload to warehouses across Asia, Europe, and North America. On July 27, 2004, in Chicago, Motorola CEO Ed Zander stepped onto a stage to unveil the phone the company had almost killed. It launched at $500, priced not as a mass-market phone, but as a rare, desirable object. Internally, its specs were nothing special. The same processor and camera as Motorola's older models, but nobody cared. What people cared about was how it felt, the cold metal, the crisp snap of the hinge, the way it looked like nothing else on the market. Within months, prices dropped as low as $99 with a contract, and suddenly everyone could own one. Celebrities embraced it instantly, spotted in the hands of athletes, musicians, and actors from red carpets to magazine covers. Motorola leaned into the fashion angle hard, even producing a limited Dolce & Gabbana special edition. Color became a phenomenon of its own: hot pink, plum purple, teal, gold, each variant its own cultural statement. A single UK retailer once ordered 250,000 pink units alone, a third of the phone's entire original global forecast. By 2005, the RAZR V3 wasn't just a phone, it was the single most recognizable object of the decade. Motorola pushed the platform further with the V3i, an upgraded camera microSD expansion, and even an official iTunes edition. The V3X brought true 3G, but at the cost of the original's razor-thin profile, growing noticeably thicker and heavier. The V3XX pushed further into HSDPA broadband speeds and even added a front-facing camera for early video calling. But as smartphones like the iPhone emerged in 2007, the RAZR's era of dominance began to fade. Motorola's phone division was eventually sold to Google, then to Lenovo, but the RAZR never refused to disappear. In 2020, Motorola revived it, a foldable smartphone named and shaped in tribute to the original blade of aluminum. 2 decades later, the RAZR V3 remains proof that the boldest ideas are often the ones a company almost refuses to build.